Thank you for joining us. My name is Jose Guzman, and for those who don't know, I am the Grants and Engagement Coordinator here for Bloomfield Township. A little louder. I am the Grants and Engagement Coordinator for Bloomfield Township, and my unofficial title is Baseball Fanatic. So, welcome to my talk. And right off the bat, I want you to tell you that I'm not an academic, all right? All right, that's what it is. All right, so I'm not an academic, all right? I'm just a lifelong baseball fan. I am married to an academic, so I do know about the importance of doing research and never generalizing, but being married to an academic doesn't make me an academic, the same way that my wife being married to me doesn't make her a Sports Jeopardy champion, which I am. All right, so this is going to be a pretty informal talk. All right, so we're talking about maybe 30 minutes for the actual presentation, going to leave about 15 minutes for Q&A. And then I'm going to set aside 15 minutes so that you can actually come up with baseball cards and we can actually talk about those as well. All right, so now the question is, what is in this for me? Well, the purpose of this talk is just to express my lifelong love for baseball, and I do hope to engage your love as well, or maybe you're just a passing fan, or maybe you're just in love with someone who's a diehard fan and you want to know how to relate to them a little better. All right, so where do we start? Well, actually, let's start with what is going to be included in this talk. So first, I'm going to talk about my initial love for baseball and a couple of the players who may be lifetime fans. I'm going to talk how that turned into a lifelong collection and addiction to baseball cards themselves. Then we're going to dive into what I see baseball as the American ideal, about encompassing all different groups, be them Puerto Rican Americans or African Americans or different groups, ethnic groups, and wave after wave, and how I think baseball, in my mind, is an ideal for the American society. And then finally, we'll talk about how my love of movies has also gotten into this as well through the baseball films that have been presented throughout the years. All right? So right off the bat, this is where I am from. I am from Long Island, New York, and there's my laser pointer. There we go. Yeah, exactly, right off the bat. A little town called Selden, right here, Long Island, New York, and that's me. I have no idea what happened, but anyway. Now, I am, like I said, Puerto Rican. Both of my parents are Puerto Rican, and all four of my grandparents are Puerto Rican, which I believe makes me approximately 2,000% Puerto Rican, all right? But more importantly, 100% American. But even from a young age, I knew the importance of what my Puerto Rican culture was. I embraced everything that was Puerto Rican, the music, the food, everything celebratory in nature, and I've always taken great pride in my Puerto Rican heritage as a source of strength. But I also knew that there was something to being American and wanting to fit in and finding a way to contribute in that way. And I found that through baseball. Now to start, I'm a Yankee fan, all right? So feel free, yeah, come on, you can boo, you can get it out, And when it comes to fandoms, that's a problem? All right. Well, you're a Red Sox fan. I'm married to a Red Sox fan, yeah, so I'm 50 years old. But I thought when it comes to fandoms, it's kind of like trying to choose the family you're born into, right? It's just not going to happen, so. But from a very young age, I got into baseball, and more importantly, there were specific players who made me a fan. So for example, we have this first gentleman here, Reggie Jackson. Does anybody know what Reggie's nickname was?
Mr. October.
Mr. October, very good. Does anybody know who gave him that nickname? I'll give you a hint. He was captain of the Yankees.
Jeter.
Not Jeter, previous captain from 1977. Catcher, died in a plane crash. Thurman Munson, congratulations, you win a Reggie bar. There you go. All right. Okay, it doesn't count? Well, Thurman Munson gave him that moniker. And the story was, when Reggie came to the Yankees, he'd already been playing with the Oakland A's, and he was a three-time World Series champion. He was the series MVP of the 1973 team, so he already had this reputation for being clutch. But when he came to the Yankees in '77, in the playoffs, he got off to a little bit of a rough start. In the first two, in the championship series against Kansas City, he only hit 125. And in the first two games of the '77 World Series, he got off to a 1-for-6 start. And so the press was hounding Thurman because he was the captain. And Thurman basically said to the press, look, Reggie obviously wants to be doing better. He wishes he wasn't struggling. But Billy, the Yankee manager, Billy Martin, Billy really should know that Reggie is a regular Mr. October. Now, some people saw that as him supporting Reggie. Some people saw it as a dig. We'll never know. The two of them did have a contentious relationship, but the moniker of Mr. October stuck because in the next 4 games, Reggie hit 5 home runs, including 3 in the deciding Game 6, making him the World Series MVP again, and helping to win his first of 2 World Series with the New York Yankees. All right? And that was my idol. That was Reggie Jackson. By the time he got to the end of his career, he had 563 home runs, which had him 6th all time. Now he's only 14th, you know. But regardless, you know, the thing about Reggie was he always, he had a very big personality, he had a big mouth, but he always backed it up. And for a scrawny, slightly uncoordinated Puerto Rican kid from Long Island, that was something I could always look up to. And here's another thing about Reggie that I didn't know at the time. Does anybody know what Reggie's middle name is? Martinez. So not only was my very first baseball hero a Yankee, he was part Puerto Rican. Reggie is 1/4 Puerto Rican. I didn't know it subconsciously. I just glommed onto the guy, but who knew? All right. Now the second player that I got hooked on. Anybody want to take a wild guess? I doubt anyone would get it, but anybody want to just shoot out some guys from the 70s and 80s? Anybody? All right, cool. This guy, Mike Schmidt. There we go. Mike Schmidt of the Philadelphia Phillies. So the first question is, how did a Long Island kid get into Mike Schmidt from the Phillies? Well, pure luck. Growing up when I didn't have cable. I definitely didn't have any sports packages, but I was living on a part of Long Island that had, I could get this local Philadelphia channel, TV6 Philadelphia, and I was able to watch all the Phillies games. So if I wasn't watching Yankee games on local WPIX, I was watching Mike Schmidt and the Phillies, all right? And the thing about Mike Schmidt was, well, when I think about Reggie, he was a great prolific home run hitter, but he couldn't really field. And with Mike Schmidt, you got the whole package. I mean, this guy had home run power, and he won 10 gold gloves. And this guy was a magician at third base. I mean, he was turning line drives and hard grounders into easy outs. Another reason I kind of glommed onto Mike Schmidt had to be those Phillies uniforms, which I just absolutely fell in love with at a young age, you know? Because again, as a Yankee fan, don't get me wrong, those pinstripes, they're very iconic, but they're kind of boring. They're a little bland. You need some color, all right? And I just love the fact that nowadays, if I can get the pointer to work, which doesn't want to work now, but these blue uniforms are actually used as, these were the traditional away uniforms, but nowadays the Phillies use these as home uniforms, throwback uniforms. That's how much they love those uniforms. But that was Mike Schmidt, that was very attractive to me as a kid to watch. And then more importantly, look at him. That's a man's man. Look at that mustache, all right? That is what a man should look like. Exactly. As a kid, I didn't know it, but he was my very first man crush. He would soon be replaced by Tom Selleck. As you can tell, I had kind of a type. Now, another connection I had to Schmidt that I did not know at the time was the fact that he talked about when he was first starting in baseball, his very first season as a rookie, he kind of got off to a subpar start. He was having some issues. So his coaches recommended that he play winter ball in Puerto Rico and work on his swing. And Mike Schmidt talked about how in one of his very first games, he started tinkering with his stance, and more importantly, he wanted to hit the ball more straight away into right center, which is a great approach for any hitter. And next thing you know, he is now this Hall of Fame level player, and it happened in Puerto Rico of all places, you know? So as for me, I would try to play baseball. I would try to emulate Reggie and Mike Schmidt, which I never could. I mean, I was decent, I could field, but I never had their power. I did try to hit lefty like Reggie, because when you're a kid, you want to hit like your heroes. So I guess one of the nice things is I could always hit right-handed and left-handed. But I did play baseball in Little League and junior high and high school, but the scouts never picked me. About 20 years ago, I tried to resurrect my playing career. My company had a softball team, And so I played some softball back in 2005, and this is me with still most of the cartilage in both of my knees. All right, so that was fun. And, oh, sorry, let's get back here. But, as I was mentioning earlier, I would never become a professional, nor would I get my very own baseball card, or would I? Hey, who's that? That's Jose Guzman, the baseball player. It's uncanny, right? All right, so here's the story. For those of you who don't know, in Puerto Rican culture, the name Jose Guzman is pretty much John Smith. All right, it's a very common name. Leave it to my dad to give me the most boring name around. It was technically his name because he's senior and I'm junior. But regardless, this is Jose Guzman, no relationship. But it should be noted that he was a major leaguer. He played for about 10 seasons. Not that remarkable. I mean, he never was an all-star. He never made the World Series. But he played for 10 years. And most importantly, he has a lifetime worth of baseball cards, which I used to hand out as business cards when I was a kid. True story. So now we get into our next section of the talk, my lifelong love of baseball cards. So from a young age, in addition to wanting to collect baseball cards of Mike Schmidt and Reggie Jackson and my heroes, I was always obsessed with baseball stats, you know? I was always going through the box scores. I wanted to see how players were doing, you know? I wanted to look at home runs and RBIs and batting averages if they were hitters, or if they were pitchers, I wanted to look at strikeouts and ERA and that kind of stuff. Now, but I wanted more than that. I wanted cumulative stats. And this is back before the internet, a long time ago, and a kid like me who wanted to get these stats would only get them through baseball cards. So you get to the back of that baseball card and you can see all the stats in the world that you want. All right? So starting when I was about 7 years old, my father and I had this little tradition, and these are some more baseball cards. We would do this tradition in February of every year is when the new baseball cards would come out, and February just happened to be my birthday month. So even though I always hated having a cold weather birthday, I would really get excited about the idea of these new baseball cards being available. And we'd go to the store, and let's not forget the gum that used to come with the baseball cards. I had many a stomach ache, didn't use gum, but it was totally worth it. But anyway, he would take me to the local sports card store, and he'd get me a box of baseball cards. And I'd spend, and it would usually be on a Sunday, and I would spend all Sunday opening those cards and organizing them and take all the time in the world. And true story, if I didn't finish, I was allowed to take off Monday from school and continue. So I love that tradition. I took my time. But it's important to know that when you're opening these packs of baseball cards, it's a truly sensory experience when you're opening these cards, because first you get the picture. Hopefully it's like an action shot of your favorite player. You've got that fine finish on the front. You've got that rough feel on the back of the card with the stats. You get that smoky aroma from the cards being stacked together. And then most importantly, if you're lucky, you get gum stuck on one of the cards, you know, and then you take the gum off and you get that nice little sticky residue, you know, which you can clean off. You leave that alone, because that to me is a mark of excellence, all right? But that to me is what collecting baseball cards was all about, you know? And I should probably say that my father passed away a few years ago, and throughout our life we had kind of a tumultuous relationship. There was a lot of broken promises, but this was the one thing I could always count on once a year, us getting these baseball cards and going through them together, and that's something I'm always very grateful for. And then as I learned over time, they cost a lot of money, especially for myself. Now, as time went on, oh, actually, let me show you these. So these are some of the cards from the very first series I collected. There's a few up here as well. This is from the Topps 1981 baseball card collection. So obviously, I've got Reggie and Mike Schmidt right here. We've got Rod Carew and Dave Parker. Dave Parker just got into the Hall of Fame, which is, thank God, because he deserved it. We've got Ricky Henderson, who just passed away. We got Jim Rice. We got Jim Palmer. We got Dale Murphy. We got George Brett and Nolan Ryan. I mean, look at how colorful these cards are. Like, these are just very, just from a sensory point of view, this was just something great to look at as a kid. I mean, nowadays, I'll show you some of the newer cards. The newer cards, it's just about the picture. You know, it's just the action photo, but like they really went out of the way to like brand these, and every different year use a different style. We got J.R. Richard and Dwight Evans. J.R. Richard, you know, not a Hall of Famer, but he was always one of my favorite players because if no one is familiar, he was this phenom in the late 70s, early 80s who could throw 100 miles an hour. In fact, it's a joke that he threw a ball so fast that he could throw it through a car wash without it getting wet. And, but unfortunately, 1980, he developed this circulatory issue that turned into a stroke. And he was just he was 25 or 26 at the time, and he would eventually get healthy again, but he would never be that same pitcher. And that, he's definitely one of the great could have beens. He passed away about 5 years ago, but definitely could have been players. So, oh, sorry.
The Red Sox out, we quit.
Yeah, I am. Sorry, I can't help it. So anyway, time went on, and I think I stopped collecting cards officially in about 1989. Just for some reason, I just didn't have the same interest as I used to. I grew up, I moved out to LA, and then all of a sudden in 2007, when my parents were packing up my childhood home and getting ready to sell it, I get this care package in the mail. And lo and behold, my parents still have a whole bunch of baseball cards from when I was a kid. I have all of these rookie cards, and most of them are right here. And I got these cards and was like, wow, this is really cool. And then from there, I met this amazing woman who would become my wife. And she decided to feed this, because what ended up happening was she started a new tradition starting in the early 2010s where for Easter, instead of chocolate, she'd give me a basket full of baseball cards. So I start collecting baseball cards all over again, and I am addicted, and I can't stop, okay? Not that I don't want to anyway. But over the past 15 years, I have amassed and reamassed just about every baseball card from my young life till now. I have to estimate, we're talking about anywhere between, say, 50 and 100,000 cards maybe. And due to the pandemic, I had time to actually get them organized. This is bookcase 1 of 4. All right, bookcase 1 of 4 in my basement. And yeah, so this is, like I said, it's an addiction.
Each year is how many books?
Each year, the new series by itself is 700 cards, but then what will happen is then they do additional cards. So I think by the time it's more close, if you want the really full collection, it's 1,000 cards, but if you just want the base collection, it's about 700 cards.
But
So.
how many books?
I can usually fit them in one big binder. Or if it's too much, or a lot of it depends, because sometimes the cards will come in the chrome version, and then I'll break it up into 2 binders. So, but anyway, and then usually the next question I get after all of this is, well, what's the most expensive card you have? Well, I mean, it's kind of arbitrary. I mean, all these cards definitely have sentimental value to me, and I have done some research, and I think I have about 24 cards worth maybe $100 each. All right, that's what I have. And what I also learned is over time that the cards that are really expensive are the rare ones, the unique ones, the mistake cards. So just a few examples here. So we have Bill Ripken over here, and I don't want to pull in because it has a naughty word. Someone as a prank decided to put F-face on the knob of the bat, and it got printed as a baseball card. They then did a correction, but if you can find this card, it's worth $2,500. All right? Then we have Sherry McGee, who's a player from the early 20th century, and the only difference is his name. So if you can find the incorrect card, that's $100 grand. Well, these were the early cards. The early cards were very simple. Then we have Juan Gonzalez. Over here, you can see him batting righty, which is what he's supposed to bat, but they accidentally printed the reverse. And actually, that's actually pretty common, but if you can find this card, it's worth about $1,000. And then finally, we have Frank Thomas, the Hall of Famer, and I actually have his rookie card over here, but the original card they printed didn't have a name. And if you can find this card, that is worth $17,000. So again, you got to get really lucky to find some of these cards, But anyway, again, I'm more about the sentimental value. I'm more about the cards that I get, And then this is probably the card that I would have to say is probably my favorite. Obviously, it's Reggie Jackson. There's 2 reasons why I love this card. I love this card because, first of all, it denotes his 1973 season when he was both the World Series MVP and the regular season MVP. And more importantly, look at that uniform. I mean, that is a uniform. They don't even, I think they wear them as throwbacks nowadays, but it ain't the same. The second reason I love this card is because I got it in 2015. I found it in a store for $20. I ended up taking this card with me to Los Angeles when I was a contestant on Sports Jeopardy. Had it in my pocket the whole time, and I just considered that card to be a lot of good luck. So that's me. But I have continued to collect cards, and then this is examples of some of the cards I've gotten in recent years. We've got Derek Jeter in his final year with the Yankees. We've got Aaron Judge's rookie card, which I'm sure is going to be worth something someday, as well as all of these cards from notables, various different cards that I have been able to find because I got them right off the press, you know? And this is something I'm always going to enjoy, you know? When it comes to baseball cards, it's always this thing of it's a time capsule. It's a way to time travel because I can look at these cards and it's a way to see the players who once were as they, you know, as more importantly, when I look through the card, I remember who I was. I got the card whether I was 7 years old or whether I was a couple of years ago. So that's how much baseball cards mean to me. All right. So next, let's talk about Puerto Rico and more importantly, how I've learned to connect to baseball through my Puerto Rican heritage. All right, and we're going to start off with this gentleman right here. This is Raul Acosta. This is my maternal grandfather. He passed away in 2002, and when he passed away, my mother wanted me to do some research for his service, and she mentioned that he used to be a baseball player, and this was news to me. As I start doing my research, I'm like, wow, my grandfather used to play baseball? Okay, that's kind of cool. So I'm digging and digging, and I learn about this team called Los Cangrejeros de Santurce, or the Santurce Crabbers. And just so you know, crabbers refers to the fishing for crabs, not the other kind of crabs, but anyway. So this is Los Cangrejeros, and this is a professional baseball team that's been in existence since about 1939, and more importantly, they have been a winter baseball destination for major leaguers throughout the years. So some of their notable players have been people like Roberto Clemente, Willie Mays, Orlando Cepeda, Tony Perez, some guy named Reggie, and Negro League legends Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson. In fact, Josh Gibson was player-manager on the very first Cangrejeros team. And if you look at this skinny run at the end, anybody want to take a wild guess who that is? That's my father. That is Raul Acosta. So after he died, I found out that he played with Josh Gibson. That sucked. 1939. 1939. So for those that don't know about Josh Gibson, he is a true legend. There are those who consider him to be the actual all-time home run king. Estimates that he hit 800 home runs in the Negro Leagues, you know? But more importantly, people should know that as of late in May of last year, baseball is starting to integrate some of the Negro League stats into the current stats. So right now, he is credited as having the highest career single-season batting average at .432 and the third highest career batting average at .372. So he's finally getting some of the recognition he's deserved. Now, as far as me and my grandfather, well, we didn't have a close relationship. It's a theme of my life. And I always hated the fact that I didn't know this story, you know, but the more I thought, because what I eventually found out was that after that season in Puerto Rico, he broke his pitching arm in a car accident, and his career was over. So maybe it was like shame and pain, and he didn't want to talk about it, but I can just at least take some solace in the fact that he has this accomplishment, and I can take pride in that, and that means a lot to me, all right? Now, more about this is the fact that when I talk about baseball is I love that to me, it's a melting pot. It's about the blending together of people from all different kinds of cultures. And for this next section, I do need to credit my wife because she is an academic, and a while back she was thinking about doing a class on baseball. And when you're an academic and you're getting ready to do a class, you do lots and lots and lots of research. And with that research, I came across this book, The American Game, Baseball and Ethnicity by Lawrence Baldessaro and Richard A. Johnson, which takes a deep dive into baseball from the early 20th century. So when we think about baseball and inclusion and integration, for obvious reasons, we think about Jackie Robinson, who broke the color barrier in what year? 47, correct, and led to a wave after wave of African American players getting their chance to play baseball. But it's important to know that, you know, when it comes to baseball, we also want to think about ethnicity and creed and countries of origin. There actually were a few groundbreakers before Jackie Robinson, all right? And in this book, they take a look at that. They take a look at the immigrants who came to America and from different places. So we have German immigrants, we've got Irish, Jewish, Italian, Slavic, and then of course the book also covers, the integration of African Americans and the development of Latino American players as well. But it's important to recognize what this was about. Baseball owners. See, you think it was just like, hey, they were being nice to let these people in. If you know anything about baseball and baseball owners, anything to make a dime. All right, so while inclusion is nice, they saw this as a way to make money. And in fact, let me just read this passage from the book. Ever since athletes of German and Irish descent entered the major leagues in large numbers more than a century ago, the ethnic background of baseball players has fascinated fans and the media. Even before the turn of the century, major league teams were courting ethnic fans. In St. Louis, ads were placed in German language newspapers. In the Polo Grounds, the section of bleachers where Irish fans gathered was known as Burkeville, and in other parks, Irish fans sat in what were known as the Kerry Patches. For professional baseball, new immigrants meant potential new customers. One way to tap into this market was to put ethnic heroes on the field. In the 1920s, commentators noted the influx of players of Italian and Slavic origins and wondered why there weren't more Jewish players in the big leagues. However, it wasn't until the mid-30s that representatives of new European immigrants, primarily Italians and Slavs, appeared in the big leagues in numbers that approached their proportion of the total population. The era following World War II saw the most dramatic ethnographic shift with the belated entry of African American baseball players. All right, well, let's see what we're talking about when we're talking about these different groups. So we have German players, Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth. A lot of people don't realize this, but Babe Ruth is German. In fact, his last name, Ruth, is an Americanized version of Root, R-U-T. And here's the story. Even though these guys didn't get along, that's the theme in baseball, Babe Ruth actually had a really nice relationship with Lou Gehrig's parents, who were German immigrants who spoke very little English. And the story was, he used to talk to them in German, and he was very welcoming to them. And I know Lou Gehrig always appreciated that. So it's something you never thought about, because when you think of Babe Ruth, like, oh, the American ball player. And he knew German, and he spoke it any time he wanted. And then when we're talking about Irish players, we got Eddie Collins and Big Ed Walsh. We're talking about Jewish players, we got Al Rosen and Hank Greenberg. And of course, with Italian players, we're talking about Joe DiMaggio and his brothers and Tony Lazzeri. All right? So it's important to know that what I find fascinating in this book is it really goes into the fact that these were, immigrants and children of immigrants. They saw baseball as a way to fit in. It was an American game, and yet they kind of turned it into their own game by making it more diverse. And to me, that's what that's the ideal of baseball. It's this idea of this lifeblood that is refreshed every generation with new players from different groups. All right? Now, back to Jackie Robinson. Again, he broke the color barrier in 1947. Does anybody know who's the first Latino to play Major League Baseball? All right, I won't leave you hanging. Meet Luis Castro. Luis Castro, AKA Judd, AKA Count, made his Major League debut in 1902 with the Philadelphia A's. So Luis played for part of one season with the A's. His background is Colombian. And while I'm not going to speculate, but from what I read, he was a really good minor league player. And it's just when he got to the big leagues, it didn't necessarily translate. He only hit like 230. But again, I can't speculate as to how much of his ethnicity might have played a role in having issues. But regardless, he made it to the major leagues and he played almost a full season, which is pretty cool. We have other Latinos of note. These are from the early 20th century as well. We have Armando Marsans. We have Miguel Mike Gonzalez. And we have Adolfo Dolph Luque. These are all Cuban players right here, and they all played in the early 20th century. Anybody notice a theme in any of these players? What? Cardinals. Well, Cardinals. I mean, Cardinals and clubs. Those are the two biggest groups at the time. But my thing is the Americanization of the nicknames. He can't be Adolfo. He's got to be Dolph. He can't be Miguel. He's got to be Mike, And I'm sure Armando was really Manny. But also, while these were Cuban players, and you can't really see it in the black and white photos, they kind of passed for white. They were very light-skinned. So I'm sure that being able to pass for white helped in that they were able to have this access to baseball. But again, these are players we don't really hear about a lot. All right. Now the next one is, okay, again, I'm going to keep coming back to Jackie Robinson in 1947. Again, very significant. And again, I don't want to downplay this at all, but I just want you to know that there were other players who also had some significant accomplishments. So let's go to my culture, Puerto Rico. Anybody want to guess who or when the first Puerto Rican played in the major leagues? Won't leave you hanging. This gentleman right here by the name of Hiram Thorne. First Puerto Rican to play in Major League, and when did he debut? 1942, 5 full years before Jackie Robinson. All right? So, how unknown is this accomplishment? Well, I didn't learn about this until 3 months ago when I was asked to do this talk, and I just did some research for the heck of it, and I found out about Hiram Bithorn. And more importantly, Hiram Bithorn doesn't really, doesn't really bring about any reverence. It's not Walter Johnson or Wade Boggs. In fact, I'm very tempted to add this to the list of my favorite baseball nicknames, which include Johnny Walkenfuss, Biff Pokeroba, and Rusty Kuntz. All right, just cool names. All right, but let's get back to Hiram. So, just to confirm, he pitched in parts of 4 seasons over 5 years. He amassed, and he was with the Chicago Cubs. He amassed a career record of 34-31 and a career ERA of 3.16, which is not too shabby. More importantly, in his second season in the big leagues, he threw 7 shutouts, which is still a record among Puerto Rican pitchers. So the other thing I learned about Hiram was after his second season in the big leagues, in the 40s, he enlisted in the Navy. And from what I read, he inexplicably put on about 30 pounds during his service so that when he came back to the big leagues, he wasn't really the pitcher he used to be. And in fact, he ended up developing a sore arm, possibly overcompensating for his weight, and he ended up retiring in 47. But he did try to mount a comeback in 1951. He was pitching in the Mexican League. When his career and life were cut short, he was killed in a bar brawl by Mexican police. Not exactly the natural, I know. So, but, yeah. But, yeah, exactly. So the question is, why is this important? Because in the academic circles, we always get this. We'll talk about certain things. And I shouldn't say we, I'm not an academic, but I hear this. Why is this important? Well, it's important to me just because, first of all, it's my culture. But second, when I think about history and the history of baseball, I see this sort of like never-ending series of caves underground, and I just feel like there's so many people and stories that just kind of get lost in these unexplored areas, so it's kind of important to know. But the good thing to know is that, after Hiram Bithorn, and of course it helps to know all the stuff you want to be a Sports Jeopardy champion, hi. But with Hiram Bithorn, what's important to know is that the game of baseball has thrived and has been in very good hands with Puerto Rican players who have followed. We're talking Roberto Clemente, Roberto Alomar, Ivan Rodriguez, all Hall of Famers. Some guy named Reggie, all right? In the 90s, I took a lot of pleasure in watching Bernie Williams and Jorge Posada win championships for the Yankees. We have the catching brothers, the Molinas. We got Benji, Jose, and Yadier. And Yadier really should be a Hall of Famer. We'll see what happens. And now we've got Carlos Beltran, who's on the ballot the first time this year. And in my mind, that really should be a Hall of Famer. This is the ultimate 5-tool outfielder right there. All right? And nowadays, we've got Francisco Lindor, Edwin Diaz. They're Mets, but we won't hold that against them. This is Edwin Diaz. As well as Carlos Correa and Kiki Hernandez. All right? So it's important to know that when I think about baseball, I think that a big part of baseball or baseball history is due to the inclusion of Puerto Ricans. And I just think about my Puerto Rican heritage pulsating, or the fact that baseball lives through the inclusion of groups after groups after groups. And it makes me proud to be an American. It makes me proud to be Puerto Rican. And it really makes me proud to be a baseball fan. All right, now speaking of fandom, there's one other thing that I'm a huge fan of, and that is movies. All right, so this is downtown Detroit in 2022. Can anybody guess what movie was shooting here that came out last year? This is downtown Detroit. If you can see that blue Chevy Nova, that was when they were shooting Beverly Hills Cop 4. I was downtown and I was on set and I got to take some pictures, but just wanted to show you that I'm a huge huge movie fan in addition to a baseball fan. And it's important to note that when it comes to movies, they are a mirror for culture. It's who we've been, who we are, and who we can be. Learn this and more on my podcast, Cinematic Connections, which is available on both Apple and Podbean, wherever podcasts are available. So as I mentioned earlier, my wife was going to do a baseball class, and she's a film scholar, so she was really focused on doing a class on the history of the baseball film. And because she was doing this research, we watch and even discover films about baseball. All right. So, for example, what are some of the baseball movies aside from the one you just saw? Just throw them out. What do you got?
Pride of the Yankees.
Pride of the Yankees. Anything else?
Bull Durham.
Bull Durham. What else? Sandlot. Very nice. Does anybody know what the highest-grossing baseball film of all time is? No, that's in the top 5. A League of Their Own. All-time box office hit right there. So the other thing that I noticed about baseball films, as soon as my wife pointed it out, was that when it comes to baseball films, it's a genre, but even within that genre, there are sub-genres and deeper topics because not all baseball films are alike. So as I started doing this research, or we started doing this research, I started learning certain things, like we have the history of the screwball comedy in baseball. Is anyone familiar with Rhubarb or Kill the Umpire? Okay, so Rhubarb is the story of a Brooklyn baseball team. The owner dies and leaves the team to a cat. Very funny. Then we have Kill the Umpire, which is the story of a person who can't hold a job because he's obsessed with going to baseball games, yelling at the umpires, until he goes to umpire school himself and becomes the umpire, and they start yelling this at him. But both very funny films. Baseball and biographies. All right, this is kind of a very important. You mentioned Pride of the Yankees right there. Fear Strikes Out, Jimmy Pearsall. But again, we got this long history of baseball biographies. Baseball and women. We mentioned League of Their Own. Is anyone familiar with Blue Skies Again? 1983, story of a woman breaking into professional baseball. Very funny film. Baseball in color. We got Bingo Long and the Traveling All-Stars. Soul of the Game, which is a really nice HBO film from the 90s, which tells the story of Jackie Robinson, Satchel Paige, and Josh Gibson, and how it was sort of like the last few weeks coming up to who was going to get selected to be that player. It's about how they knew each other, and it's about their little rivalry and brotherhood. Baseball and economics. I mean, 8 Men Out is really about gambling, but technically it's about economics because of the way Charles Comiskey was a bastard. But I will include that in the world of economics. We've got Baseball and Myth. You mentioned Field of Dreams. The Natural was based on a book. Does anybody know how the actual book of The Natural ends? In the book, Roy Hobbs strikes out to end the game and dies at home plate because of the 20-year-old bullet wound he has. That's how the book ended. All right? But in the movie version, he hits a 600-foot home run to win the game, and everything is great, right? It's okay, we'll forgive it. Better ending, there we go. Baseball and kids. We had this in the 90s. All of a sudden, we had these baseball films revolving around kids, like The Sandlot that was mentioned. Baseball and fandom. That's pretty interesting. Or the fact that Fever Pitch, while it was about Boston Red Sox fandom, this was actually a film based on a book written about a man who's obsessed with soccer. And 15 years later, they turned it into a film about baseball. And then, of course, my favorite category, baseball and the lovable losers. So we got Bull Durham, Major League, Bad News Bears. We've got Long Gone, another HBO movie. They did a lot of good movies in the 80s and 90s. And this is notable because it's about minor league baseball in the 50s. And there's actually a Josh Gibson type character who's trying to get into baseball by pretending to be Dominican. So it's actually kind of funny. But, so the question is, I don't really, of course, when I think of lovable losers, I do love to think about the 1978 Yankees. That's definitely lovable losers right there. But when it comes to this topic, you know, I don't really have much more to say about that, but I did want to include it because it does, at least I kind of sum up or bring to a center one of the things that I like, which is baseball is a meritocracy. Baseball based on skill, based on talent. That idea is that if you put in the work and you have the natural God-given talent, you are going to get that opportunity to play. And I think it's beautifully summed up in this film, Fever Pitch from 2005. So, if anyone is not familiar, it's about a lifelong Red Sox fan, it's okay, and his obsession and the fact that he's trying to start this romance with Drew Barrymore, of all people, and how, you know, all of the pitfalls and things that come along. And let me find the quote so I can read it for you. And in the film, this Jimmy Fallon character, he talks about what it is he loves about baseball. And he says, you know what's really great about baseball? You can't fake it. You know, anything else in life you don't have to be great in. Business, music, art. You can get lucky. You can fool everyone for a while, but not baseball. You can either hit a curveball or you can't. That's the way it works. Now, aside from the pro-Red Sox agenda here, it has a point, all right? Baseball is based on skill and talent, and most importantly, it's based on truth, you know? The legends of the game, they made it look easy. They played the game with skill, passion, and heart, but in my mind, in everyone's mind, they earned a spot on the field. And most importantly, baseball thrives on diversity. When we have a diverse product, that is the best form of the game available. This is the 1971 Pirates. Aside from winning the World Series, does anybody know what they're famous for? That's another Reggie bar. There we go. There we go. 1971, September. And again, the manager, I don't think he was trying to make history. He just literally wanted to put the best lineup on the field. And this is the very first lineup that was just all minorities. All right? And again, that's just a reminder that that is when baseball is at its best, when it embraces that diversity, that talent. And of course, the 98 Yankees, a very diverse team as well. But to me, as a baseball fan, that is what it should be about. And again, I know in this culture, we're getting a lot of stuff about how diversity is bad, but not for baseball. If you're a real fan, you understand that the more diverse the game is, the more talent it has, and the more you can really embrace it. And that's why I'm always going to be a fan, even when my team's losing. I thank you very much. And just a reminder, this talk is presented by the authority of me. It may not be reproduced, transmitted in any form, account, or description, or disseminated without my permission. No, this is a movie tattoo. Completely different conversation. All right, so we still got about 15 minutes left. So, yeah, so hit me with some questions. What do you got? Yes, sir.
I walked by your cards and I saw that some are autographed and some are not.
Yes.
Do they come that way, or do you go to a lot of trade shows?
I just started, actually, yeah. So some of the cards, like for example, there's a Juan Marichal. I met him last year at Fenway. That was the very first. I mean, I've been to local card shows, but I went to Fenway, because you actually get to go inside Fenway Park. You get to go on the field, and it's pretty cool. It's in the middle of the season, but they, yeah, I can see the scoreboard, but they schedule it when the Red Sox are out of town. And Ron Marichal was there, and I got his signature. So that was awesome. And actually, it's funny because they had a whole schedule of signatures, but they didn't release the schedule until after I had booked my plane flight. And on Sunday was when they had a whole bunch of guys I wanted to get autographs from, but by then it was too late to switch my flight. But the answer is, if it's available, yeah, I try to get autographs. Otherwise, hey, I'm just happy having the cards.
How long have you been in Detroit?
I have been in the state of Michigan since 2011.
So you miss Tiger Stadium.
I do miss. I never got a chance to go to Tiger Stadium, and that's a shame. I mean, I like Comerica, but it's not the same. It's not the same. Not the same.
What game is Fever Pitch about? What game does Fever Pitch describe?
Well, not so much a game, but it describes the 2004 baseball season, which I'd really rather not go into.
One particular game.
Besides Game 4 of the championship series?
That was it.
Okay.
Who was the losing team?
Yes, the one with Jimmy Fallon.
I'll share with you, I'm older.
Yeah.
Jim Norton had a big triple to win the game 7. That was the last year the National League winner went to play the National League winner right to the World Series. Next year,
69 was the beginning of divisional play, yeah.
12 teams in each league. They went
Yep.
to playoffs. But I'll tell you a story.
Sure.
67. This is amazing. 10 teams in the American League. On the last day of the season, 3 teams had a chance to win the pennant.
Yeah.
Go 161 games and 3 go to last. That's mind-boggling.
And you're never going to have that again because now, well, because of the wild card. So it's an idea of like, well, if I can't get there, I can get the wild card spot. But, you know, hey, it's what it is. Garbage Pail Kids, if those aren't familiar, so Garbage Pail Kids came about in the 80s, and those are those little cute dolls, which were a offshoot of the Cabbage Patch Kids. And as of late, and again, you're going to find this a lot, there's a lot of like...
It's like a cartoon.
Yes, it's a cartoon. So they actually create baseball cards based off of modern day players, and they do sort of like satirical versions. So you have Aaron Sludge, Mookie Bats, you know, and they turn them into monsters. They're One of the Dead. There you go.
Will you explain this nice gentleman how he bought Babe Ruth from the Red Sox?
Well, it's funny. Just one story that I was going to share that I didn't have a chance to was the fact that I know that people always talk about the curse of the Bambino and this idea that like, oh, the reason the Red Sox haven't won all those years was because of this curse. Well, there's something else that actually was going on. In 1964, the Red Sox signed a player by the name of Pokey Green. Pokey Green. And why is this significant? Because the Red Sox were the very last team to integrate. So, Punsey Green, there we go, Punsey Green. And I was also doing some research. The Red Sox had a chance to actually draft and sign Willie Mays. But they had this ownership that really had to be dragged into integration. So I thought it was less about the curse and more about the fact that, you know, hey, they missed out on a lot of opportunities. That is true. Red Sox is doing pretty great nowadays. But any other questions?
Roberto Clemente was Puerto Rican, he was Hispanic.
Yeah.
Put it together.
Yeah. Or speaking of, or earlier when I mentioned the nicknames, on some of his very first baseball cards, they did not credit him as Roberto Clemente. He was Bob Clemente. Yeah, exactly. You got to sell him to the American people as Bob. Sure.
Google it to see if I'm correct. The last day of the 1972 season, he got his 3,000 hit. On December 31st, he was doing some kind of volunteer work on the plane, relief work.
Yep.
Nothing in South America.
No, there was a earthquake in San Salvador. Roberto Clemente.
But he this is bizarre, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
He was going west, and he actually lived in New Year past 12 o'clock midnight on January 1st, 1973. But when he crashed, it was actually 12. It was still the previous hour. And so he lived, my joke is he lived in 1973, but he died in 1972.
Yeah.
It really was sad.
And another story about that was,
You knew about that story?
I know about that story. There's another part because one of his teammates, a gentleman by the name of Robert Walker, he was down there playing winter ball, and he was helping him pack the plane. And when he saw that Roberto was like doing all this stuff himself, he said, "Hey, Roberto, can I help you? Let me come with you." And Roberto literally said, "It's okay, I got this. You be with your family." Wow. So Roberto ended up dying. That's not the end of the story because Robert would go on to have kids, and one of those kids was by the name of Neil Walker, who ended up getting drafted and played with the Pittsburgh Pirates for 6 seasons, and for obvious reasons is very deferential to Roberto Clemente saving his father's life so that he could be able to play baseball and live. So yeah, a true humanitarian. Yeah, if you guys want to, we still got a few minutes. If you want to come up here and look at the cards I have on display here, and we can talk about them. So this book right here is from this is from my first series from 1981 right here. This is a collection of rookie cards of Hall of Famers right here. These are other notable famous players I've collected throughout the years. Of course, I had to bring at least one display of Yankee cards. And this one right here, these are all Major League Baseball players born and raised in Michigan. Right here, I have the cards right here. So if you want to come on down here, ask me any more questions about baseball cards, please do.